Hey y'all, welcome back to Arizona Mavericks, where we talk real stories, real strategies, and everything in between when it comes to building something bold right here in Arizona. For today's episode, all I can say is you're welcome. I'm especially excited about today's episode because this individual isn't just someone I respect for what he knows, but for how much he cares. George Kimble. He's a business analyst with the Maricopa Small Business Development Center, better known as the SBDC. And if you're a business owner who's ever felt overwhelmed by financials, cash flow, or just not knowing where to turn, this could be your guy. So George brings decades of experience in banking, business advising, and what I would call professional listening. He helps small businesses get access to free resources that most people don't even know exist. So I'm really excited to bring light to that in this episode. In this episode, we talk about the foundations to set up businesses that actually last and why emotional intelligence matters just as much as a good piano. You'll also hear about his famous four-legged stool approach. And yeah, it sounds funny at first, but trust me, it's solid gold. This conversation is full of heart, humor, and straight up practical advice. So grab your notebook or don't, just listen in. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Let's get into it. This is Arizona Mavericks with George Kimble. Well, I'm
Good.
super duper excited to chat with you today.
Yes.
I've got Mr. George Kimble with me here, business analyst with the Maricopa Small Business Development Center, correct?
That's true.
Amazing.
That's true.
Okay. So I'm thrilled to know you. We've had a couple conversations, and I know that we're equally passionate about serving the business community. But for those who haven't had the pleasure of hearing you speak or getting to know you, could you tell us a little bit about your background and who you are, what you do?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me be here today. It's an honor and my first podcast. So I'm excited to do this. So I'm George Kimble, and I am a business analyst, counselor with the Small Business Development Center with Maricopa College. They are our host organization. They are like our boss, I guess I say. We report directly to Maricopa Community College, but then also to the SBA. So our directive comes from the SBA, and funding comes from the SBA to the college, and the colleges produce funds. So we're the non-academic part of the college, or the business development, economic development part of the college. So the SBA has asked us to go in the communities and help businesses get started, help them find funding, add employees, increase their sales, whatever we can do to make that client be more successful, then that's our goal and objective. And the nice part about the program with the SBDC is that there's no cost. So we don't charge our clients for any services. So it doesn't matter whether I spend 1 hour or 20 hours with a client, it doesn't matter because we don't charge them. So our purpose is to take that client, whatever goal and objectives that they have, to make them more successful and to counsel them, to guide them and help them any way we can to get their goals and objectives. So my background has been in banking. I retired from JP Morgan Chase back in 2019. 37 years with the JP Morgan Chase, 47 years in financial and CPA business work, and decided that, well, it might be time to retire. So I did at the end of 19 and enjoyed 4 months of sitting around the pool and enjoying myself. And then my lovely wife decided that I needed to go back to work. I said, wait, I have a job. It's called retirement. She said, no, it's not enough. So, any long story short, it's, she was at a convention with our center director, Nancy Saunders. They were good friends. They were chatting. And Nancy said, Terry, what is your husband doing now? And my lovely wife says, well, he retired from Chase and he's home and sitting by the pool and he's driving me crazy and he needs a job. If you know my wife, you would know that.
What's your wife's name, by the way?
Terry.
Terry,
Yeah.
Shout out to Terry. We're so grateful. Thank you for everything you do.
Terry is president and CEO of the Chandler Chamber, and it does an amazing job there with the community. And so Nancy said, well, we're looking for part-time counselors at the SBDC because COVID is hit and we're trying to gear up, and you think your husband would want to be a part-time counselor? And my wife said, well, sure he would. And Nancy said, well, geez, Terry, don't you think you should ask him? She says, nope, he's going to do it. So long story short,
that kind of woman.
Telephone call says, honey, guess what? You have a job. I said, oh, wait a minute. I do have a job. It's called retirement. She says, no, you got another job. It's called SBDC. And so I joined the SBDC in May of 20, right during COVID, which was a very interesting experience. they said, hey, go to the tech center, get your laptop monitors, and go home. And so for the next 2 years, I was home virtual
Mm-hmm.
and doing counseling virtually, which I had never done before. And because it's banking, we were always one-on-one and in person or
Mm-hmm.
in the client's offices. So that was a real new learning experience for me
Mm-hmm.
in learning that technical skills of trying to monitor client business by emails and laptops.
Yeah.
Was quite an experience to do. And during the COVID period, we learned a lot. We learned a lot of what businesses did and did not do correctly,
Mm-hmm.
and more so not correctly. And it was sad because businesses that we've had in business for 10, 15, 20 years, they didn't have the appropriate cash flow when a disaster, catastrophic things hit to survive more than 15, 30 days. And it was sad because if, we closed out hundreds of businesses during that time frame because they weren't properly structured. They didn't have that proper cash flow system, and they didn't have enough investment to be able to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't resilient enough. They couldn't pivot fast enough.
Yeah.
Restaurants a good example, as we know. They pretty much closed their doors. They went to food trucks.
Yeah.
Hairstylists, they closed their salons and they went door to door, home to home. So they were able to pivot, but a lot of clients just weren't ready to do that. So I learned a lot during that process and dealing with customers and dealing with my clients and
Mm-hmm.
especially new startups.
Yeah.
And I deal with a lot with startup clients. I love to work with startups because I love the initiative that they're trying to do and trying to get them into the proper setup mode, I guess I would call it, and getting that foundation set for success. And there's proper ways to do it and proper ways not to do it. And again, we learned a lot during that process. So my baking background, I think, has been helpful because I help navigate the clients with that financial aspect. And it's just not brick and mortar type thing, but it's more the financials and financial statements and how do you prepare and how do you look at a financial statement and what's the cash flow?
Mm-hmm.
You look at a financial statement and is cash flow net income?
Mm-hmm.
No, it really isn't. It could be, but no, it really isn't. So looking more into the financial areas and getting that client in the financial situation set up. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that overview. Before we move on, I want to go back a little bit to the, let's say, for those of us who are acronym literate, you'd mentioned a few things, SBDC, SBA. So I want to touch on those if we could. And also, we'd be remiss if we didn't shout out, of course, the beautiful business development center that we're currently in. We're in the
Right.
Catalyst with the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce. So could you explain those two acronyms and then bring us to how we ended up you stationed in this wonderful building?
Yeah, absolutely. And my apologies for that. Yes, the SBA Small Business Administration and the SBA Small Business Administration will soon have a new boss.
Yeah.
We have a new administration that has taken over, and so executive levels will change. So the SBA Small Business Administration will have a new boss soon, and could be new directives. And so we'll see. Be interesting to see in 2025 how the Small Business Administration processes go forward,
Mm-hmm.
and what rules and regulations that they're going to apply to
Mm-hmm.
the small business client. SBDC Small Business Development Center is who we are and what we are. A lot of people. It was interesting because when I interviewed with the state director and the center director for this job back in 2020, one of the questions that the state director asked me, she said, George, when you were a business banker at JP Morgan Chase and you had a small business client and they needed assistance with business plan or whatever, who did you refer them to? I said, SCORE.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, and then there was silence. I'm going like, oh my gosh, did I say the wrong thing? Did I just cut my throat here? And now I'm not going to get hired. Oh my gosh, what did I just do?
Oh no.
Oh no. And so then she came back. She said, that's very interesting. She says, that's kind of what I thought you would say because nobody knows about us,
Mm-hmm.
and we're kind of the best kept secret, I call it.
Mm-hmm.
When I ask clients and they say, my initial interview with the client, I said, how did you hear about us? And they said, well, we went to the SBA website and blah, blah, blah. I said, did you even know who we were before that? They said, no, we don't know that you have the service available. And I think we call it the best kept secret. And so our initiative, one of our initiatives in 2025 is to get that word out as to who we are, what we do. We're a business resource. And in my objective in 25 is, since I live in Chandler and I work in the East Valley, so I work in the communities, Chandler, Gilbert, Queen Creek, and part of Mesa. We're getting more into Mesa and trying to exploit our services in those communities for those businesses. It's amazing the amount of new startup businesses that are happening in this quadrant. I call it the East Valley.
Well, I think Arizona is 10th in the nation for new small business registrations.
It is. Yes,
Wow.
it is. I just saw that. And the East Valley is also just exploding in new businesses. And a lot of it is the spinoff of these tech companies that are coming in, and then there's spinoff little companies that are doing things. So people are getting excited, and so they're sometimes leaving their W-2 income jobs and spinning off and doing something that they want to do. And so that's exciting in helping them. But yeah, I think we're the best kept secret when it comes to business consulting. And I guess we have to be careful that we're not consultants, we're more counselors. Because we don't charge for our services. Consultants typically do. And I always have that conversation with my clients. I said I always ask them to reach out to a business consultant like yourself and be prepared, because these are professionals, and yes, they will and should charge you for services if that's what you want to do. And so I always make sure that they understand that. But the services we provide, helping write business plans, helping do financial forecasting, helping them find the funding avenue that they might, which is very difficult in the world we live in today, and it probably won't get any better in 25 as we go forward in that learning environment.
Yeah. I think it's, as you said, a very well kept secret, but on accident. And I'm grateful that we're getting the word out there, because, I always say, and I've been interested to know if you agree, the top 3 reasons that businesses go under are issues with the buckets of cash flow, market demand, and personnel problems. Would you agree so far?
I agree.
So what I hate to see, especially with the small business owners that I work with, they get so stuck in the day-to-day. They have an incredible product that they decide to sell. They're a chef with a beautiful vision and open a restaurant, or they're a dermatologist and open a practice, but they don't have the experience or the education to really set that business up. However, and this is something funny, a dentist once said to me, I said, how did you even get funding to be able to open your business? And they just did this. For those of you that aren't watching, you're just listening, and I'm waving my hand in front of my face, because essentially what he was articulating was, I'm a dentist, I make a lot of money, and I'm a middle-aged man. Of course they were going to give me money. So all of that to say, we see similar clientele in that they don't have that foundational knowledge.
Right.
So it's incredible that your organization offers it for free. Where does that funding come from, by the way? I mean, someone's got to be paying for it, right?
That's a great question. And that's the misconception that most startups have, is that they're going to be able to get funding from a local financial organization. Most likely they don't, because financial organizations, I'm going to say banks, credit unions, they're cash flow lenders. And they want 2 years in business. They want financial statements. They want to see cash flow. They want to see debt to income ratios. They want to see equity. They want to see collateral. Startups don't have that. And so it's really a fallacy. They think that they're going to find funding. And a lot that I talk to say, well, we're just going to get grants. And yes, grants are there, but the probability of finding a grant for your startup business is, we never say no, but it's very difficult to find that funding. We offer them opportunities, but it's very, very difficult for them to do. So the funding really comes from, I call the FFF, Family, Friends, and Fools. And
I love that.
family, friends, and fools. And you're gonna help support my company. It's a startup. I don't have any financial and any background. So who wants to do that? And so that's kind of where it has to start. And you have to build self-funding to be difficult. I have some clients that say, yeah, I'm ready to go, and I got $100 in the bank, and I'm ready to start my company. And I said, well, $100 probably won't get you where you want to get. You need substantial 4 to 5, 6 months of cash flow is probably adequate.
Mm-hmm.
to get to you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
The SBA did a survey of 1,000 clients on all of the U.S. and they found out that 50% of the clients that they surveyed didn't have enough cash flow in their existing business to last more than 15 to 30 days. And that's sad. And again, we saw that back in post-COVID. They didn't have the ability to handle the downturn of the economy. And when something happens, it's always a small business client that suffers. We came out of COVID and then we had supply chain issues and they couldn't get inventory. They couldn't get supplies.
Yeah.
Then we had a workforce shortage and nobody wanted to work. And so those are small business issues that constantly happen that they have to be prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have to have some kind of I call it backroom funding that's available with Uncle Jimmy or Aunt Sally or somehow that's going to be able to help them get through that process.
That's crazy. You said how many days? 15 to 20 that they don't have enough?
Over 50% didn't have enough cash flow to last more than 15 to 30 days.
That's
Yeah,
terrifying.
yeah. So if something, I call it wind blow you sideways, and in a small business, something will always happen, especially in a startup. They don't realize. So we help build those business plans and those financial forecasts. And we go out 2 to 3 years and trying to plot the success. And again, the forecast is it's an idea, it hasn't happened. So it's a forecast. And try to make a reality into that forecast, but to set up that cash flow situation so that there's adequate.
And it's interesting having really getting involved in networking in the community and talking with individuals like yourself, but more specifically, financial advisors, small business bankers, things like that. Just the emphasis that they place on cash flow is so important. And I love the entrepreneur. I love anyone that has an incredibly passionate idea about a product or service that they want to put on the market. However, it's crazy because we're how many decades in of being past like the Michael Gerber E-Myth Revisited, and we're having the same problems in business over and over. We're not planning appropriately. And I'm not just talking about the business plan and the vision. It's what's the cash flow to support that. And I didn't know about the 15 to 20 days. I thought it was closer to 4 weeks, 6 weeks, but it sounds like that number has shrunk pretty substantially.
And a lot of it has to do with, again, post-COVID, when the businesses got the PPP loans or the EIDL loans. The PPP loans were forgiven. The EIDL loans had a 2-year hiatus. And then, 2 years later, now they're paying back. And if you didn't have money 2 years ago, you still don't have money today. Now you got a loan payment. And so the SBA has estimated, we heard over like $90 billion is going to be charged off because these businesses can't pay. So we don't know what 25 is going to look like again with these small businesses. But going back to what I love to do with a small business, and you do the same thing. And I always look at getting that structure for a startup company, getting that structure set up so it's on a solid foundation. And there's 4 elements, and I call it my 4-legged stool concept. And I had a client about 9 months ago say, "My gosh, George, that's the most stupidest thing I've ever heard of." So now I call it my stupid 4-legged stool concept.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Exactly. So you can envision the 4 legged of a stool. It's a very solid, very sturdy, and it can withstand a lot of pressure. And you as a small business is going to have to experience that. So the first foundation leg is making sure that there's financial stability. They have a good financial system that can produce a financial statement, and also make sure receipts and disbursements are recorded properly. And at the end of the year, your tax accountant is going to want to have that, but making sure receipts and disbursements are recorded properly. But most important, at the end of the day, that system, whether it's a QuickBooks or wherever it might be, it's going to produce financial statements, because every organization has to borrow money at some point in time. Maybe not today as a startup, but sometime within the next 2-year period, they have to borrow money, and the financial organization is going to ask for your balance sheet and income statement, unless your financial statement. So they have to make sure that, and that the financial statement, that income statement, that's your checkbook. At the end of the day, what's the net income? That's your checkbook balance, basically. And is it negative or is it positive? So making sure that that foundation, that functionality of that system is producing the correct report. And a lot of times, I think you mentioned earlier, that CEO, that entrepreneur, that dentist, that chef, try to, just focus on their business. Doesn't have time for this stuff, I call it.
Yeah.
And they really have to outsource some of that stuff because it's just too much for a CEO to handle sales and marketing and, the financials and still trying to grow their business. It's just a lot. So they really have to be diversified and find outside sources, professionals that can help them in that. The second leg is the foundation as to the entity. Who are you? And there's basically four entities. Sole proprietor, you, partnership, you, me, and 15 of our best buddies, and or LLC, limited liability company, or C corp or S corp, and typically those are large corporations that we don't worry about. S corps are something that clients look at for tax purposes. So I always encourage clients to talk to their CPA to see are you in an S corp, and then who should you be. Most likely, what we see is the clients are like LLCs, limited liability companies. And it is what it is. It's just because it's like that wall that comes down between you personal and you business.
Yep.
As we know, everyone's lawsuit crazy today. You know, I don't like the way you're looking at me, Kate, so I'm going to sue you. Yeah. And this microphone bumped in my face, so that could be a lawsuit or something. So it's a process that they want to make sure that they're protected.
Yep.
Okay. But attorney told me a couple of months ago, he said, make sure your startup clients understand that if there's intermingling of business and personal funds, he says, I'll go through that wall and I'll sue your client personally, and I'll sue them on the business standpoint. And a lot of clients my clients don't understand that, small business don't understand that. They think because they have this LLC set up that I'm good.
Nope.
But if you're continually intermingling business and personal funds, then that wall goes away. So I asked my lawsuit crazy dude, attorney, he said, well, then what point in time do you not sue my client? He says, well, it depends on financial statements. And depending on, I can look at that income statement and I can see that there's sufficient cash, there's sufficient income coming in to pay the expenses, pay salary distributions to the owner, dividends, whatever. And at the end of the day, there's net income. It showed me then that that business is probably strong enough to stand on its own. I call it making sure that it's there, it's solid. And at that point in time, and it could be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, whatever, he said, it depends on the income statement. When I can see that there's enough traction there with that income that is sufficiently solid, at that point in time, I would not expect to see personal income coming in to support that or expenses being paid. So I always encourage clients, make sure there's separation of business and personal on that. And a lot of times, as we mentioned, the clients don't have the sufficient cash flow, and that's cash is king in any situation. So I always encourage clients to make sure that they look at that foundation and how strong are you. So if you're a sole proprietor slash LLC, how strong are you financially? Do you have investments? Can you withstand that downturn? If you can't, then again, we'll look at the FFF circle and see what you can do to enhance the value of your business to make sure it's solid and sturdy. So a couple of examples. I have a client. He says, "Hey George, I've earned a lot of money, so I need to look at sources." So my uncle Jimmy comes in and says, "Hey, I love what you're doing, Georgie boy, and I'm going to give you a couple 100,000, but I want 45% of equity of your company." And so I got a couple 100,000. It's going to be helpful. But then my uncle Jimmy says, "Hey, but by the way, since I just gave you 200,000, and I'm going to start calling shots and run your company," and I'm saying, "Nope, this is my company. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to give you the right to do that. So no, I don't want to carve out equity out of my company." Okay. Second example I use is my Aunt Sally comes and says, "Hey, Georgie boy, I love what you're doing and I love your business. And I got a $200,000 money market over at JP Morgan Chase. I'm going to pull that out. It's at 4% and I'm going to give it to you, but I want an 8% note for the next 10 years. So now I'm paying my Aunt Sally on a monthly basis, an installment, but then at the end of 10 years or 5 years or whatever, she's gone. There's no equity carve out. She doesn't control my business, but she's given me stability during that time frame to build up cash flow. So a couple of ways to take a look at that. Most financial organizations, if an equity interest comes in and they're under 20%, then that equity interest person doesn't have to sign any personal guarantees. They're not liable for any debt. but they're there for the strength of the organization. So if you do have to carve out equity, and the person doesn't want to be really responsible, then you keep them under 20%, and they should be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
The third leg is the financial organization. We've found in the last couple of years that local financial organizations, banks, credit unions, are probably more small business oriented than the larger organizations, the Chase, the Wells, the BofA's, and others. They are small business, but not small business friendly, so to speak. They want your deposits, but come time to get a loan, it's very difficult to do. So I always encourage clients to look locally, look in your local market, find that neighborhood financial organization, and get to know them. Get to know that branch manager, that business banker, that personal banker, whomever it is. They will be your best unpaid partner. Next to me, of course, but they will be your unpaid partner. When I was at Chase, as a business banker, commercial lender, I probably had 150 clients, and I knew every one of them. So, okay, when you walked into my office, I knew who you were. I'd probably been to your business. I'd seen your financials. I knew you because you were my partner. And I encourage my client to do that, making sure that they understand that local networking with your local chambers, with your local banks, with your local economic development people, they're your best source of resources. So make sure you get to know them. At some point in time, that client's going to have to borrow money, and that business banker is going to be helpful.
Absolutely.
So get to know them.
And I will take this moment to selfishly shout out Miss Christy Boutain over at Meadows Bank and that entire team.
Yeah, she's great.
They're doing some really great work. But we've got other small business bankers out here in our area. I know we have Gateway and a few others, and they're just
First Bank here, and in the credit unions, landings. Watfu is one here that we've used a lot, and others. Mountain View so there's great organizations that really cater to the local community, and not that the business banks don't, but they do. But when it comes to one-on-one relationship, we find out easier that the client looks at those small organizations.
Yep, it's really taking it back to that relationship.
It is
based approach, and I've been with the big names. I've been with Wells Fargo. I've done Chase. This is the first time I've had such a personal experience, and it's a really, side note, great example of customer service in general, how to give such unique, customized attention to your clients and make them want to stay with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not exactly the people, and I don't want to say big banks are bad. They aren't, because I was with Chase for 37 years. But and the people are great. We find that in the large organizations that the bankers are moved around more frequently than in the smaller banks. So you get to know the banker, and then 6 months from now, he or she might be gone. You got somebody new. That's very typical. And it's the platforms that they have. So, and it's not that they can't lend money, but it's just the platforms don't allow them to do that. When I was at Chase before I left them, I had a platform at a minimum. And if you were under that minimum, I gave you an 800 number and call somebody. And I couldn't help you. So you might be working with an underwriter in China or India or someplace. So who knows? Yeah. But, I could have been their banker for 5 years, and you came in and need to borrow 50,000, 100,000, and it's below my minimum. So let's say caters an 800 number. I can't help you. And that happens. And that's what we don't want to have with our small business clients, because they need that relationship. That's key.
Very little can get me to walk away from a company faster than handing me an 800 number, please. For my small business, please don't.
Yeah, it does. And then you're on hold forever, and it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen. And the fourth part of the foundation is insurance. Making sure not only you have like key personal life insurance, but building insurance, you have a building medical insurance. If you have employees, making sure that they're adequately covered. So there's a lot of different local organizations that you can look at, making sure that you're properly insured if something's to happen. So that's my foundation that I look at, is that the financial security, financial operational system, the entity who you are, the local financial organization, and then the insurance. Those are 4 pillars that if my client has those, then their success ratio is greater than not. Are they 100%? No, but it gives them that that level of security, that knowing that when something happens down the road, and with all small businesses, I call it the wind will blow you sideways, and it will. Something will happen that you're prepared for it, that you've got that foundation set, that you're okay.
Yeah.
And so it has worked in the past. So
Do you know what's interesting? Someone just yesterday said to me, Kate, do you have an issue with control? Do you like to control things? And I really sat with it for a moment because it's someone that I really respect. But what I realized over the course of our conversation is I like to control what I can control, which is pretty limited in this world. I can control what I do, and I can control how I act and how I feel. What I can't control is a worldwide pandemic. I can't control too much the outcome of, let's say, an election. I can't control that part of the country's on fire right now.
Yeah.
However, I can control my business and what I put into it. And that foundation, I think, is another way to think of it, at least for myself, is just being proactive and be prepared for what could come,
Right.
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, I think is how that phrase goes. So let's say your clients have found you early on and they set their foundation, they're doing well, they're rocking and rolling, but let's say that unexpected thing comes around and derails them. What would you recommend at that point? Can people who are established come and work with you, or only startups?
Oh, no, absolutely. We work with all kinds of clients, and we've had some clients that have been with us for 10, 15 years, and
Wow.
and we work with them on a daily basis, just kind of help them, with their, every year is a new year. And so I always encourage clients, and now's a good time to do it because we're right in the first part of 25, is to have that business plan. And we help develop that business plan and work with it. And it's just not a one-time deal. It's a working
that living
tool.
document.
It's a living document. And it needs to be adjusted every year,
One would hope. Hint, hint.
And to me, it's that document that it tells me who, what, where, when, why concept. And I always tell my client, just tell me the story. Give me the clip note version. Do a business plan, and it should be 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, not 47 pages, because nobody's going to read it, and it's just repetitive information. And I had a client said, well, George, I got a lot of great information, got a research stuff. And I said, well, then great. Then put it into an addendum or an attachment that if I had to read it, it's there, but I don't need to read it to make a determination of how strong your business is. So that plan tells the story, and tells I always tell my client, tell me the bad parts. Tell me the good, the bad, the ugly, but I want to know your obstacles. I want to know what worries you, what keeps you up at night, what's your biggest fear, and I want to see that in a plan. But then you show me how you're going to overcome those fears, and you show me how you're going to overcome those obstacles. And that gives me the feeling, as a reader of your plan, and as a former loan officer, when I would look at a plan to try to want to give you money, does it make sense, and how strong you are? And I always take a look in the plans today, and everything is AI generated, and ChatGPT, and all those different forms of the artificial intelligence. It's great, it's wonderful. It gives you a tremendous amount of information, but it doesn't give you that passion, and it doesn't give that personal feeling. I had a client just a couple of days ago send me one, and I went, oh my gosh, it was the most beautiful plan I've ever seen. Every detail that I wanted to see was there. And he called me and said, hey, George, what do you think? I said, my gosh, Jane, that was perfect. He said, oh, I know. I said, this was all AI generated, wasn't it? He goes, yeah, it was. Gotcha. He said, how'd you know that? I said, because there wasn't you, and there wasn't passion in your plan. And I want to see that. But I always encourage you, use the AI platforms, and use those, because they're absolutely tremendous. And that's our world we live in today. So use those, but don't plagiarize from them, but use them as a tool. Use them as a way to obtain new ideas that maybe you haven't thought about, but put your own ideas, your own passion there. So if I was to read that, I would understand the good, the bad, the ugly, and if I had to make a determination that this client is strong enough that can withstand a lot of weight. In conjunction with that plan, then, is the financial forecast. And they always ask the client, every year, do a 1-year financial forecast. And a financial forecast is your best guess estimate. It hasn't happened, but it's your best guess. It could be based on history, but if it's a startup, I don't have history. So it's just, how do I guesstimate what's going to happen? And so I always tell my clients, I always work backwards. And so I'd say, and I'm a simple thinker, and I'll say, okay, so for the year of 2025, I want to make 120,000. I'm going to pick a number. I want to make 120,000 this year. And so then I work it backwards. So I know then I have to make $10,000 every single month to get to my 120 by the end of December. Then I say to myself, my gosh, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to go to my business plan. My business plan is my roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
The business plan is going to tell me in detail how I'm going to make that $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm an hourly charger, if I charge by the hour, or if I charge by services, or how am I going to do that and that? So the business plan tells me the story. The financial forecast shows me the numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and they should tie in together. So I always tell a client, whatever you tell me, show me. If you tell me I'm going to make 120,000 as an estimate in the year of 2025, and I look at December gross sales, I should see 120,000, not 2.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that. So tell me the story, and then show me the story, and make sure they coincide. If you're seasonal, like a restaurant, for example, if I saw your financial spreadsheet, I would expect to see a dip. May, June, July, August, income numbers are down. September, October goes up. So I would expect to see not a straight line, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect to see a wave in that. So if you're seasonal, you tell me you're seasonal, then show me you're seasonal.
Have the data to back that story
back
up.
it up. So yeah, if you tell me you're seasonal, I would not expect to see straight line revenue through the projection.
And truly, I mean, this is, I think, advice very specific to Arizona and where we are, in that almost every business around here is seasonal.
It's not just restaurants, but it's typical. Every business you can think of, becoming, April, May, June, July, August, when the snowbirds, I guess they call them, whatever, migrate, then the population is less, and so sales are down.
Yep.
And just about every function you can think of. And so you would see that financial forecast dip. So that's the story I always say, and I help them with that process, and help them with build that plan, help them with that forecast, and see, is it real? Is it realistic? I mean, again, it's a forecast, so it hasn't happened, but is it real? And making sure that business kind of knows what's happening, and it makes me a lot of startups. And getting to know that client, getting to know that business, and how strong it can be. Here's a good example. When I was at Chase, I had a young couple. They were just getting married, and they wanted to start a restaurant. And
I'm already terrified. Young couple getting married, restaurant.
Yeah, well, the story gets better.
Okay.
And of course, that's the number one high risk of any lender is restaurants.
Yeah.
Because the failure rate is so high. So restaurant, but we listen. Young couple, and they want to buy an Arby's franchise, and Arby's franchise was $500,000. And young couple, and no backing, basically. And I said, so what's your experience in this food industry? Well, said we eat at Arby's 4 days a week, and we know everything on the menu, and we could recite it backwards. I said, this is wonderful. That is absolutely. How about cash? How about cash flow? How about experience? Well, so that's the kind of thing we run into, and it's you can't say no. This is really a stupid idea. We don't do that. And so I said, okay, so let's do a 3-year spreadsheet. Let's do a 3-year financial forecast. So work out a 3-year plan, and let's see. So they came back about 3 weeks later, and they had a great spreadsheet. Somebody helped them with it. The financial forecast for 3 years, and for 36 solid months, it was negative income. And so I said, so you and your fiance are going to work 24/7 into this franchise restaurant, 7 days a week, 24 hours. And for the next 3 years, and at the end of the next 3 years, you're bankrupt. Why would you want to do this? And they go, oh my gosh, I don't know. I guess we probably shouldn't, should we? So smart idea. No, but so we try not to, in our way of counseling, we don't say, no, that's a stupid idea. But we kind of show them the black and white of it, and say, does this make sense, or does it not make sense? And they said, no, it really doesn't. And so we help them with that. So it's not always the right answer. We don't always give the right answer, but we work diligently as we can to help that client get to where they want to be.
You have such a specific set of skills. Your skill stack, the way that you're able to dive into the business operations, the financials, but also you're clearly an empathetic person. It's coming through very loud and clear that you care about the people that you talk to. And so I would share from my experience working with business owners that are, let's say, $1 million revenue and under. They've been in the business for a couple years, a few years. I find a barrier to entry sometimes in helping them is that emotional component. Perhaps it's ego, perhaps it's fear, a combination, whatever the situation may be. Um, and I take inspiration from this conversation because individuals like yourself and me, ultimately, we just want to be of service to people
Mm-hmm.
and we want them to be successful. But I recognize from my perspective that it takes a lot of bravery for someone, a business owner, to pull back the curtains and let us into their P&Ls and their operations and be open and vulnerable enough for us to say, let's like really think this through. Does this make sense?
Yeah,
Do you run into that as well, the
a
emotional
lot.
component?
A lot of emotional component. It's interesting because I just had a client last week and we're looking at different processes, and all of a sudden she became very quiet. And I said, well, are you okay? And I says, I'd like to take a look at your financial statements. And she kind of closed up, and then she just started crying.
Mm.
And what do you do? You're on a Zoom call, and I'm sympathetic with her, and I said,
The script doesn't have the same effect.
I can't wipe her tears because
No.
I said, oh my gosh, did I say something wrong? No, she said, it's just some things I'm thinking about. It's just emotional. And so we get out of the black and white of the numbers, but we get more into the personality and the emotions of it. And I do that. That's kind of my personality. It's not cash flow numbers. It's not, black and white type things, but it's more of the empathetic situation, and how can I help you get better? What
Mhm.
is your goal? What's the road you're on, and how can I help steer you on that road and get away the barriers, whether it's lending or whatever, however I can help you.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's just I use communities, I use resources, I use yourself, for example, I use the Chamber of Commerce,
Mhm.
I use the economic development groups, the expertise and specialists that they have in those entities. I refer a lot of my clients to those. I have a lot of clients that have social skills and have social things that are very important. And so a lot of
Mhm.
times we have 10 counselors total with the Maricopa Small Business Development Center.
Wow.
We're building more as we go along, so we're kind of getting back. And so because we have such a great workload
Mhm.
of clients coming in, and so we try to deal one-on-one as much as we can with that workload. But I deal with
Mhm.
those clients all the time, and be very empathetic in what they're trying to do, and how they do it, and build that plan and help them down that road, whether it's financial or whether it's building a product, or maybe giving another counselor. We do co-counseling.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a skill that somebody has. So we have in our group, we have an angel investor. We have who does high-end stuff. We have a lady who's from China, and she does importing, exporting.
Oh, incredible.
We have a lot of different counselors who own their businesses or have owned their businesses, who
Mhm.
are very skilled in that fashion
Mhm.
and can help guide that. So we have a lot of experience. So a lot of times I'll do co-counseling with a client,
Mhm.
or more than likely I would do counseling with another client. And so if you're needing some website development, something I don't do, but I have clients that do that. And
Mhm.
so then I will outsource that particular function
Mhm.
to another client and the clients to client. And that works well. And a lot of times the social skills, social media skills, the marketing skills, those types of things that there are experts in the communities
Mhm.
that I would refer out to. And so I do a lot of hand holding and a lot of joint counseling with those, and understand like yourself and know that you're professional as a consultant, and that if my client uses you, I make sure that the client understands these are professionals. They will charge you. and they should charge you. And so just be prepared for that. Don't think you're going to get free services from them, because they're professionals in their industry. And so I try to surround my clients with the
Mm-hmm.
experts in their area, in who can give them the best service, and they do it for. It's just not particularly me, but I use myself more like the Chamber of Commerce is their connecting rods.
Mm-hmm.
They know everyone in the community. So if you're trying to do something with your particular product, then who do I talk to? Well, your Chamber of Commerce people know who the resources would be to go to. And a lot of times the cities, they
Mm-hmm.
have like great resource opportunities. So I always tell my client, contact the economic development people
Mm-hmm.
in that organization. Let them farm out their resources to you, because then now you've got another partner on board to help with that. So
I think, again, going back to the building that we're standing
yeah.
in, it's such a beautiful example of a collaboration between the town of Gilbert, Arizona, the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce, and the SBDC, and your position of business analyst. Um, you're the ultimate connector, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think Gilbert in particular has done an incredible job of really showing how, when a community opens up and connects with one another, the support and the resources are unlimited as long as we're doing it together.
Yeah, and the combination with that kind of group and the Gilbert Chamber and this Catalyst
Mm-hmm.
room that we're in, and part of this building that they offer to the clients and to business, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so we hope that more people will take advantage of that through them. But yeah, the local resources, I always encourage my client to take advantage of them, because typically they will help you.
Mhm. Well, before I let you go, let's touch a little bit on trends for small businesses 2025. We've already talked about the importance of establishing a strong foundation. We've talked a tiny bit about when a derailer comes along, knock on wood, hopefully we don't have anything too scary this year as a community. But I know AI, technology, these things are very much at the forefront of everyone's mind. But from your perspective, what are you looking at in 2025? What do you anticipate you're going to be coaching some of your clients on in terms of trends for small businesses?
I think the trend's going to be, it's going to determine what happens going forward with the administration, and
Mm-hmm.
again, what the small business, the SBA happens to do. And, here in Arizona, immigration is always an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a real issue going forward with a lot of clients. Tariffs could be another issue. And so how do you deal with those? We don't know. Those are unknowns. And so a lot of times, just trying to help from a technology standpoint, get as much technology as you can. Use the AI sources. It controls our world today.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing what's going to happen. We're at with the Maricopa Gateway College, is where our office is at, down
Mm-hmm.
in Phoenix, and they had a conference a couple of weeks ago, and Dr. Amy Diaz read an article. She said this gentleman in 1930 estimated that by 2030 there would be autonomous vehicles. Now, if you can imagine, back in 1930, someone says there's autonomous vehicles, they're like, put them into straitjackets because they're crazy. But look where we
Mm-hmm.
are today in 2025. Where will we be in 5 more years? The world, by technology, the robotics is changing the world.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw Amazon's now looking to deliver the packages by robots. So
Mm-hmm.
why do we need people? And so, from a small business standpoint, from a technology, how do you balance that? You
Yeah.
need the technology, you need that, but is it now replacing the workforce?
Mm-hmm.
And I know in our communities with Chandler Gilbert and Queen Creek, there's a great workforce development. They're working with the schools
Mm-hmm.
and getting down into the high schools now and teaching the technology trades
Mm-hmm.
in that form and fashion, and teaching the younger generation, how we're going to forecast going forward and what's going to be that trend. It's scary because you don't know how to counsel sometimes when
Mm-hmm.
it's all AI technology stuff. If you need something, you just go to Siri and she'll do it for you, concept.
Yep.
And so I think technology is going to be the key going forward. Um, Dr. Amy, and she said, I would estimate that by the year 2050, we might not even have driver's licenses.
That's fascinating. I haven't heard that
Why
one
would you
yet.
need driver's license when everything's autonomous vehicles? And you never saw this back, 10, 15 years ago, they show the Jetsons.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're flying
Of
around in these
course.
little spaceships. We thought, oh my gosh, that's just so cool. That's happening today.
Yeah.
And what will it be in 5 more years with technology.
Mhm.
And the younger generation coming up, my granddaughter who's 5 years old knows more about my cell phone than I do.
Yeah.
She said, Dad, Grandpa, I want to get you on Snapchat. I said, what's Snapchat? She said, well, just give me your phone. I'll put you on. And she did. Well, okay. She's
George
five.
Kimble is on Snapchat.
She's
You heard it here
5
first.
years old. And then, okay. But how do we deal with
Yeah.
that generation coming up? So I think our communities here in these valleys, at least that I work with, are becoming very astute. The Chandler Community College is now offering 4-year degree coming in September in the AI technologies and those types of things. And that's the foundation. And we're in high tech, we're in that industry that the chip industry in Phoenix and in the East Valley.
Yes, Silicon Valley is in the desert now.
Exactly. And so we're here. So there's a lot of spin-offs from these high tech industry that deal with the AI situations and the workforce and teaching the younger generation how to do that. They're building spaceships over in Mesa at the air base.
Yep.
It's incredible things that happen today. So how do we adjust and how do we keep in tune to that in counseling? With that technology. So I think that's going to be the key going forward in 25 is that from a technology standpoint, whether you're a restaurant or whether you in the service industry, how do you handle your clients going forward with such a rapid pace of technology?
Right. Well, I think you made an excellent point earlier about the individual who sent you that AI generated business plan. It's very clear when someone leverages technology or artificial intelligence, aka AI. It's very clear when they leverage that without editing that or injecting themselves and their passion into it. And I'm of the mindset and opinion that small businesses should be the champions of this technology and artificial intelligence, because if not, then we're not going to have a say in how these things are regulated.
Correct.
And it's all developing at such a rapid pace that by the time the agencies do attempt to catch up, it'll be, it'll change. It'll be too late. My advice to small business owners when it comes to technology, even if it's not AI, is just learn it, start small. And as we've said a few times, it is a tool and you can use it however you want. But for example, the fact that so many small business owners haven't automated some of their communications, such as like a text follow-up to a customer for a review, things like that, we are still behind the times in so many ways. I'm not even worried about them in AI yet. I just need them to get some more time back to their day instead of automations.
Yeah. And we see a lot of that with the startups. Some are really, far advanced. Others are, it's really a struggle to get them. And you're thinking, where will they be in 2 years if they aren't addressing the issue today and adapting to the situation of my business product, whatever that is, has to be in tune with the AI technology of going today, of what's going tomorrow. Because what's happening today is going to change tomorrow. And how do I adapt to that? And how do I keep my business being more successful, whether it's in technology or whatever it is, service industry, they've got to be in tune to that. So I think that's really our key issue going forward, which I think 2025, 26 is that keeping abreast to that's rapid pace of technology.
Absolutely.
And I keep on adjusting my business. Then you can't just say, here's my business plan, here's my roadmap, and I'm just going to set it aside and look at it next year. No, it's an ongoing thing. It's a daily, it's a monthly change of direction as to how do you keep that company going forward.
And if for some reason you, as a business owner, hesitate to look at that business plan or don't get excited to look at that business plan, to me, that's a pretty good indication of something's off, whether your mission has changed or you didn't have the plan solid to begin with, or you're terrified to look at your bank account. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs have been there. Again, encourage everyone to be vulnerable. Seek help and insight before it's too late, whether it's someone like myself or an incredibly free resource like George. Yeah, seek help and community before it's too late. Um, Social media as well, I think important to just briefly note that, no administration out there is coming to save us, but certainly their decisions can ruin your business and ruin your life. So I personally wasn't really on TikTok too much. I don't know if you kept up with the
No.
shenanigans, let's call them,
Yeah.
regardless of the particular platform. I think for small businesses, another thing I see is that they're very resistant to the different kinds of platforms that are out there. And some would advise to get on every single platform possible. Some advise just stick to one and do that really well. Do you, out of purely curiosity, do you have any opinion on the part that social media can play?
It's important because you can get overwhelmed too fast, too quick, and you can grow too quickly. Here's a good example. I had a client yesterday, and she's starting her business, and she's doing embroidery, and she's on the social media site, and so she's got now like 200-300 followers. Is great, but then she's got a connection, and somebody's going to give her another 5,000 followers, and then that follower is going to give her another connection. She's got now 10,000, and I'm saying all of a sudden now you have like 20,000 followers, and you're doing this home-based business, and all of a sudden you're going to get flooded. You're doing it out of your garage concept, and you have to be careful because you can grow too fast, and it's like drinking water from a fire hose. And all of a sudden, oh great, my sales are booming, but then I can't perform, and then all of a sudden I get a negative review, and boom, all of a sudden you just go downhill too quick. And you can't recover fast enough. And so I always encourage clients that are starting out to make sure if they're on the social media site, make sure that they can handle what's going to be there. And a lot of times it's just negative stuff. In the world we live in today, people use that as a medium to show their negativity. And whether it's right or wrong, I just, I don't like you, so I'm just going to put something negative out there. And it hurts.
Yeah.
It hurts restaurants when they have to get poor reviews, and people see that, and then some people are just like that, and then it's sad. So you have to protect yourself. And so I always encourage my client, making sure you're on social media sites, whether it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever it might be, making sure you can control that and control your volume, because sometimes you can't.
Yeah, and before you get that so coveted viral moment on social media, make sure you are, again, leveraging technology, have systems in place, automation where you can, because you can do that in a way where you're not losing the thing that makes you so special to your business. You're not losing the passion behind your product or your service, but for sure, it will set you up for success when you do then go out and get attention on social media, and all of a sudden hopefully your sales are booming. That way you're not completely overwhelmed and you have systems in place. I think it's Dan Martell who wrote Buy Back Your Time, who says systems. It's a great acronym for save yourself time, energy, and money. I never heard it before in that way, and I said, how important.
Save your time and money. That's good. One other thing I do want to mention before we go is that we do have a sister organization. We're SBDC, but we do have a sister organization who deals in government contracting called Apex, APEX. And so they're our sister organization. They do the government contracting. So they help write capability statements, and they help get the clients certified with 8As, 7As, and whatever it might be in the contracting area. And so we do a lot of co-partnering with those. If a client that I have wants to look at government contracting, whether from a local level, national level, state level, whatever, then we co-partner with our organization called Apex, and they have counselors available. And they then work with that client in the process. But typically the client has to be in business for 2 years before they can really start doing government contracting. And but to begin with, for the next 2 years, we'll work hand in hand with that client to get them with Apex and work with that. So to have a joint working relationship with them.
So many resources out there. So
we
untapped.
We have a lot of resources that we have in our tool bag, so to speak, that we have that we provide clients with on a regular basis.
Incredible. So if anyone has questions or wants to get in touch with you or someone else in your organization, how do people get in touch with you, George?
You know, they can get a hold of me through my email, george.kimble@domail, domail.maricopa.edu.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And I've enjoyed this. So
Yeah,
I hope
first
this works well.
podcast in the
Yeah,
book.
in the books.
I give him a 10 out of 10, folks.
Okay, good.
For sure. And we'll definitely have him back again soon because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of questions for you.
I'm
So
sure.
be prepared.
Yeah, do that. Thank you
Thanks,
so
George.
much.
Bye.